Welcome to the Practice You podcast. My name is Elena Brower. Let's dive into today's conversation regarding life's myriad transitions and how we refine our responses in our relationships, our wellness, our households, our work, and in our practices. You are invited to learn and love and listen with me. Welcome to Practice You. Welcome back to the podcast. This is such a special episode for me today. I have one of my teachers here. 15 years ago, she showed up in my life. She was brought to me by a dear friend, born in Egypt in 1954. Today, we have the great pleasure of Nevine Michaan on the podcast. She moved to New York at the age of 3. In her early 20s, while studying history and comparative religion at Vassar, she discovered meditation. She discovered that there is a function, a formality, and a fit to the universe, and that yoga is a tool, a technique, a practice with repetition, which gives us the opportunity to participate in life with intelligence and joy. She started a daily practice in New York City with a renowned yoga instructor, Alan Bateman, in the 70s. She became fully immersed in what would become her life's work. She began teaching in 1978 and founded the Katonah Yoga Center in Katonah, New York in 86. Nevine seamlessly relates her approach to yoga through comparing it to the likes of a musician. Her artful use of metaphor is one of her most well-honed techniques when articulating the teachings. These teachings are empowered by her practical approach to integrating the mind, the body, and the breath. Nevine continues to teach both online and in person through her studio, the Katonah Yoga Collective in Bedford Hills, New York. She is also teaching at other studios throughout the community. When she walked into my life 15 years ago, coming into my home with sandbags and a heart of gold, she'd completely changed my life. And then I proceeded to commit to getting Katonah Yoga into every single yoga studio in every country that I ever visited from that point forward. And that has come to pass. She has a new calendar out. And if you're a yoga teacher listening to this, or a meditation teacher, or even remotely interested in the esoteric arts of any kind, this Katonah Yoga 2026 calendar on Number Magic is for you. I will make sure to include the links at the bottom of this show. Nevine, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's so kind of you.
It is an honor to have you here. I wanted to ask some questions about the calendar first and point out a couple of things. Number one is, this is a way, as your bio states, to bring a sense of dimensionality and functionality to your practice of yoga or meditation, dear listener. This is not a small conversation we're going to have, so buckle up, get your notebook, get your pen, and listen carefully, because it might feel like a fire hose is coming at you, but actually this is going to give a quality of fullness to your practice that perhaps you've been craving for some time. You've dedicated this calendar, Nevine, to the planet, to the greater abode, as you write, home of our collective spirit. We dedicate this calendar to our celestial sphere of embodied concentration and radiance. Just to give you an idea, dear listener, of what you're about to get into. Nevine, I would love to hear about when all of this sort of numerical and energetic, quote-unquote, magic began to fall on you and how you figured out how to articulate it in this way. It's changed my life.
Ooh, there's so much in there, right?
I know. Well, sorry.
So I'm going to try to bring myself into a place that I can start. And then from there, then I'll open things up. So I'm going to start, in a sense, with a calendar, because I build calendars. I probably built about 8 or 9 different calendars over 8 or 9 different years, right? And the goal of calendar is time management. And time management is a canon of personal religion. So I really think that the ritual of owning your time, the idea that everyone gets 24 hours in a day, that everyone, when they're playing with a year, they're going to be playing with specific months, full moons, days, sunrises, sunsets. And it is pretty amazing that one can participate in one's time. So a calendar allows one to codify. Calendar becomes a body, and it's really how are you going to enrich that body? How are you going to play your year? So I build a calendar so that eventually one can archive. One can look and see what's ahead of you. What would you like to do? You can reflect back on it. So there's a tremendous amount of play in time. And as I said, time is the ritual, right? How are you going to use time? How are you going to manipulate time? How are you going to deal when time is boring? How are you going to deal when you're losing time? So time management, that's what I spend a lot of time on. And time, of course, has a lot to do with numbers. And so it's very magical to own numbers. So I spend a lot of time coding numbers, right? Knowing that if I'm going to make a date, it's at a specific day, it's at a specific time, and it's in reference to where I am now. So it opens up the field of living in the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of the main teachings that I've gleaned from you over these many, many years is the way in which you map everything. And I never actually really appreciated any mapping of any sort, the word cartography of any sort, until I met you and I started to drink from this fire hose of the teachings. We'll start with this question because I think it's important. Math and measure, you write in the calendar, are the tools in reading, understanding, and using the codes patterned in the template. One reads maps, but one travels territory.
Absolutely. Well, even though you say that you didn't bring your attention to mapping before you met me, mandalas are maps, right? And anybody who does yantra yoga or mandala work, these are maps. And why have a map is really so that when you're lost, you can find yourself. You can figure out where you are in relationship. You can also help people find you. So the first maps are always just orienteering, right? There's going to be up, down, front, back, or north, south, east, west. So I have to say that map making is a very traditional part of yoga. Right? Chinese maps are classic, and the Hindu maps are really the Sri Yantras, the mandalas. So, yes, I follow that tradition.
Mm-hmm. I have the Katonah Yoga on the Mat book as well, which I've had for a number of years. It's so dog-eared and delicious. And one of the sort of main influences that you've had on my practice is giving a dimensionality to my teaching. I no longer am just saying, put your hands on the ground. It's press down through the upper right and left corners of your palms, and then press down through the outer pinky bottoms of your hands. And I don't reference the numbers specifically in the same way that you do, but I would love for you to talk to our listener about the magic square and how it gives this sort of depth and dimensionality to the practice.
Oh, thank you. So, an easy way I think about when I try to describe to people first why bother reading these maps is that if you're going to visit America, right, it really serves you to get a map of 50 states. And once you have that map, you can lay it down on the ground, knowing that the map is not the territory, the menu's not the meal, but with a good map, you have a really nice overview of the lay of the land. So the first trick is that a map gives you a very big picture. Then, if you have this map of America, you can start now building the story. Here I am in the East Coast, right? I want to get maybe to the West Coast. Not only do I have to deal with the distance, but I'm dealing with time, and I'm dealing with the relationship between here and there, how much time I have, and what I want to get out of the journey. So when you want to play with the body, the easiest way to map a body is you divide it up into 9 states. So the 9 states of the body are basically very sort of glibly bottom, middle, top, left, right, center, potential, past, present. And what that really means is that when you divide a body, there is always a bottom. which is going to be like the legs and the hips and the stability and sort of like, the archetype of being embodied. And then you can play in the middle, which has to do with your arms and your competency and how you're going to get things done. And then you can go for the top floor, which is going to be about your mind and how you think and your memories and, what's out there for your potential. So the first trick of map making is once you've been someplace, you can map it. So just like once you've baked a cake, you can write the recipe. And if it is a good recipe, if it is a good map, then it becomes of service. You can use it, right, to achieve your product. So one of the biggest difference from luck and magic, we always say, is consistency. Sometimes you get lucky, right, and you find where you want to go. But sometimes you don't get lucky, and it's not that people don't work hard. It's just sometimes they can't find it. But with a map, you have a much better chance of consistently finding where you want to go. So I build these maps, and they're based on, we call it a neogon, 9 parts of the whole. The whole would be your embodiment, you as a whole being. But we can divide you into first body, spirit, mind, or mind, body, breath. That's your first division of sort of like bottom, middle, top. Then we can divide you into what we call the left, the right, the center, like the 3 gunas in Hinduism, right? One side of you is going to be like the east and the dawning. One side of you holds the west and the dusk. And then the third side would be your third eye, third hand, third foot that nobody sees but is implicitly in you.
And this is Rajasic, Tamasic, Sattvic, respectively.
Right. And then you have one more division. So those are 3 divisions of space. Just like if somebody is looking at that map of America, they can divide, what's in the south, what's in the north, what's in the east, what's in the west. So we first divide space. Bottom, middle, top, left, right, center. And then because people are not flat and a map is not just about the map, it's about the territory, we add the dimension of time. So in front is always potential, behind is always memory, and in the middle is always your presence. So now you've got the 9 states of being. And we lay it out on a map so that one can explore these 9 states of being and see how they connect with each other and how you can travel from one place to another. So that becomes the template. Another map that a lot of people are familiar with, builds on the same template, would be the musical scale and the musical staff. So musical staff has 9 places to put the notes on the staff. And then it is all about the arrangement. What is here in relation to what is there, that eventually you have a code that you can follow, that you can organize, that you can make sense of. I think yoga, one of the biggest pieces of yoga is that yoga really is for the mind. So you need a body, and a mind is very invested in the body. But the real goal is not to lose the mind in the body. So just driving territory, it's very easy to get lost. But letting the mind understand time, letting the mind understand where you are in time really makes the adventure more satisfying and more stable. And a big piece of yoga is to allow you to be stable and safe and use to your advantage that you have a body, you have a mind, you have a breath. Those are going to be the dividing point of your map. It's like a tic-tac-toe board, bottom, middle, top. Everyone's got a left side of them. Everyone's got a right side of them. So there's going to be 3 divisions of states on the left and 3 on the right, and then 3 in the center. So I build all my maps on a tic-tac-toe board, knowing that it gives enough material that when you're lost, somebody can find you. Some people get lost in the body. Some people get lost in the mind. Some people get lost in the spirit. Well, maps support your ability to be found. So calendars are maps. All calendars are maps. They're maps of a year, right? And because they're a template, they're usable. So when you put things down on your calendar, you have that opportunity to really know that you are participating in your ritualizing of time and your well-being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a sentence that you've said so many times, and it's actually in the Katonah Yoga on the Mat book at the very beginning. It's joyful to be powerful, well-organized, and well-oriented.
Yes.
And I think that's what you're speaking to, this idea that our practice on the mat, when consistent and repetitious, can actually give us the results of making this practice into a tenable, stabilizing path
Yes.
for ourselves.
I think yoga is about power, right? So the great cities of yoga are really the great powers, and the great powers you want to achieve in your practice, the power of thinking well, articulating well, hearing well, because it is very powerful to use your life to your advantage. When I think about maps and skills and techniques and yoga, the alchemy is the same as the alchemy of baking. If you have a good recipe, which is a map of something you want to make, if you have a good recipe and you're lucky enough to be literate enough to read it, and that you have the ability to measure up, because everything is about the measure, knowing the right proportions, there's no reason you won't get your cake. So I think the goal is really to become powerful enough that when you want to achieve something, you can. And a good map will help you get the places. A good understanding of time will help you get places. And, when you're well adjusted, you can help others. So I think yoga is about self-responsibility. It demands a tremendous amount of personal discipline, right? But everything does. Everything does, but when you do things well, you get the real magic of the discipline.
Yeah. You said once, I asked you, why are you here? Like, what is your purpose here on this earth?
And what
you
did
said
I
something.
say?
Yeah, it's so good. I've actually repeated it multiple times throughout my life in interviews and so forth, and even in my family. You said, I'm here to be a good mother and to efficiently use what I have.
It's true. I'm very dutiful, but that's going to be the container. Then, of course, the game is to do it well. I really work very hard to do it well. If I bake a cake, I want to bake a good cake. If I clean something, I want to clean it well. If I play with friends, I want to be a good friend, because you win when you measure up, when you follow through, when the behavior really supports the vision.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
Yes.
I'm turning now to the page of the house in
The
the
body is
maps
the
book.
house.
Oh, it's just my favorite thing. It's one of the things that I think about all the time when I am practicing and teaching, but I don't say it aloud, and I do feel like my students receive some transmission of it. So I'm going to read this to you, dear listener. The body is understood as the magic house. It is divided into 9 rooms on 3 floors with 10 doors. Each room of the body has its distinct personality, function, and atmosphere. The heart is the hearth in the kitchen, which supports the fire on the 2nd floor, through the tongue and the ability to articulate. The lungs are the windows of the body. I do often say this in my teaching, actually, which ventilate and regulate the body temperature. Each room serves a purpose. Different organs, glands, and chemical systems are associated with them. There is great joy in living in a well-kept home. A house becomes a home when occupied, consciousness mediating to center and vibrating out to the circumference. There are so many directions we can go with this one paragraph, and it is, again, on the house page in the Maps book for our listener. You can see where the master staircase is from the boiler room all the way up to the attic, down to the kitchen, up to the bedroom, down to the center in the living room, down to the garage, over to the office, over to the utilities and laundry room down across from the boiler room, and then all the way up to the observatory, sort of like the cupola of the house, as it were. I just want to point out this one sentence. A house becomes a home when occupied. For me, this means a great deal. I spent a lot of my life running and escaping from my duties and obligations, pretending like I was taking them on fully, but actually not. And I now feel at 50, almost 55 next week, that I am occupying my house, and my house is a home. It brings a tear to my eye, actually. Thank you for this understanding.
Thank you. It is satisfying. A home doesn't have to be big, but your body is your home. When I first studied with the Chinese, which was probably like in 1970s, I remember they said, your body's your house, make a mess, clean it up. Don't treasure your house so much you can't live in it. But it's not a museum. And that really spoke to me. It really made my body, my mind, my spirit accessible to me, because everyone lives in their own space and there are ways to take care of it. And so I think it's very hard to live in a house that is broken. And so it takes a lot of work to take care of a house. Sometimes you need others to help you. You need architects, you need builders, and you need people and friends to help you clean it up. But in the end, it's yours. And so that's also very magical to know that you can. You can feed yourself. You can clean up behind yourself. You can take care of things. Yeah, it's back to that sense of power. And then, of course, when you live well in your house, your spirit transcends it. And then the house becomes even more dynamic in the neighborhood because it's well lived in. So it's personal and it's also part of. And I like that. Our planet is our greater home, right? To talk about the abode of our spirit. An abode is a home. So I don't say anything that isn't classic. I'm just very good at saying it in English.
Yeah, there's a whole world of scholars that you've directed me to over time. And I wonder, for the sake of our listener, if we could talk a little bit about Goethe, Spinoza, all the humans who have impacted your understanding of these concepts over time, and who is still with you, near you, still being studied.
Right. I was totally obsessed with Goethe for about 20 years, and obsessed with Gurdjieff for about 30 years, and obsessed with Fechner for many, many years. But today, the main thing I say when people say, well, what should I read? I always tell them, read myth and fairy tale, because it's all in there, right? Because the myths are the stories that, allow us to deal with being gods or being diminished. And the fairy tales are really soothe you when you need to go to sleep, right? And knowing that you have to be careful. But every tradition has myths and fairy tales, and they're all saying the same story. So I have to say I've been very enamored with all the Vedic myths of late, because it's all storytelling. And I think anything that has virtue, if you study it, you will get the great insights, because it's pervasive. Everything has the potential to show you that there's pattern, that intelligence and proportion supports well-being. Even if you're a mechanic, a lot of times when I would teach people who were not into yoga, and I'd have to find, what metaphor can I play with? Well, the body as a vehicle goes a long way with mechanic. Right? And they understand what it means to have flat tires, and they understand what it means to take a road trip. So if I was going to tell them what book to read, I would find the myths that have to do with the journey, and how at the end of the journey, the car is, damaged or flat because it takes a lot of work. So I think it has to be broad enough, in a sense, to realize that everything is informative.
Yeah. The flat tires, they sit with me a lot when I am with people live practicing and when I'm in my own body. And I can feel when I sort of turn in on myself and the tires go flat. I wonder if you could just talk to our listener, perhaps they're walking or sitting or doing dishes. How would you instruct someone in the midst of a day to put some air in the tires?
Yes. Yes. Well, again, it's, I have to jump into analogies and metaphors, because it's conceptual. And then everyone has to find what they need to do. So if I bake a cake and it comes out of the oven and it's flat, right, which is like being a flat tire. One reason it might be flat is the mold is too big. So, like wearing a shoe that is much too big, that eventually it's exhausting and all the batter flattens out. So that's one reason why somebody is flat, is that maybe they take on too much, they have too much to do, and it makes the batter have to be too thin in the pan. But another reason you can have a flat tire is you've got to put baking soda. And baking soda is a leavening agent. So all of a sudden, how do you elevate something when it's flat? Well, that's going to be the baking soda, and that's the breath work, because prana is space dust. It's the irons, the ores, the minerals. And when you do certain breaths, like an ujjayi type breath, it is designed to use your thyroid as a filter to pan out minerals that eventually make you buoyant. So one way to,
Wow. I've
right,
never heard you say that before.
oh,
Wait.
yes, I have lots of them.
Designed to use the thyroid to pan out the minerals as a filter, to pan out the minerals
Yes,
to
that's
make you
why people
buoyant.
do Ujjayi, because Ujjayi is a filtering breath. And what are you filtering when you're playing in the throat? You're filtering the prana that is in the atmosphere, which is basically lithium from the ocean. So that's why you go to the ocean. And if you breathe the breath of the ocean, you will eventually feel more buoyant, because that is the job of that mineral. But if you go down in the well and you play for the deep minerals there, they're heavier. Their job isn't to give you buoyancy, like lead always sinks, right? So the minerals in the depth are going to be heavy minerals, heavy metals.
Iron, like ferrous minerals,
Yes.
like iron.
But then, of course, when you're playing up on top of the mountains, and you, rather than playing a breath like Ujjayi that is designed to fill you, like, filling a flat tire, but you do a breath that you smell the air that's coming up, well, that will ionize the brain. So, easiest way to clear a mind is smelling salts. Smell something wonderful, and your mind will wake up. But breathe in the throat and filter the minerals that surround you, and your lungs will get buoyant. So another easy way to eventually get rid of a flat tire, I think for most people, is you lie down on the floor, you put your legs up on a bed or on a chair, you jack your butt up just like you would jack up a car so that the tires aren't flat. You put a little block underneath and you lay there and you just breathe. And so now all of a sudden, lungs can feed your kidneys. Kidneys, just like air, can fill a tire. So you don't get air in a tire just because you have a flat tire, and you don't get air in the tire just because you're near the air pump. You have to have techniques. And that's why good yoga is very technical, just like good baking, good anything has technique. To be a good skier, you need technique. You need other things. Right? You need the love of the snow and the good fortune to be on the mountain and lots of things, but you really do need techniques. So that's why I codify my techniques. I write my techniques of yoga down like I'm a baker writing recipes down, knowing that eventually somebody else can copy it. And if they copy a technique 4 or 5 times, then afterwards they can change it, because there's lots of ways to do it. And eventually an individual will find their own techniques to add to whatever techniques that they're pulling from. Yeah, so I would start by knowing tired because you probably are either doing too much, right? That's one thing. Or tired because you need to really take in more minerals from the atmosphere by pumping your breath work.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if you're listening and you're feeling a little bit low energy, breath work is probably a really good idea based on what Nevine has just shared with us. It could be that just putting your legs up is the best thing with your seat elevated.
Or, you take a broomstick and you sit in a chair and you hold on to the broomstick and bring it up and bring it down and bring it up and bring it down. And that's like opening and closing a window. Right. So again, we're back to.
So you're holding the broomstick horizontally,
yes,
right?
horizontally, so that, east west. And that way you have a window that when you lift your arms up, your windows are open. When you close the arms down, your windows close a little. So that ability to know that if your room is too hot, open the windows. So the job of your thyroid, it's your thermostat. It regulates your body temperature. Women generally will be told their thyroids are weak, in their 50s, and men will be told their prostates are weak by the time they're in their 50s. And then the big game is, well, what do I do? But that would be like saying, my house is too hot. And the first trick is, what can I do? So in that personal self-responsibility, you can open windows. You can filter minerals. This is why people have screens on their windows, so that it filters the air, so that you're not taking in the particles you shouldn't.
Mm-hmm. So if you have, which I do, I just found out, slightly low T3, what breath work would one do for elevating thyroid?
I would say rather than a sitting practice, because too much sitting, too much standing flattens out the kidneys. Where moving and lying down is good for the kidneys. So knowing that lungs feed kidneys, so when the tires are flat because they don't get enough air, you're going to feel tired. So that's a dialogue between your lungs and your kidneys, between your ability to be buoyant, which is having a good balloon, and having it filled. So how to fill that balloon? I would do pole works. I would do arms up in the air and just put some music on and pump my breath maybe for a song, right? I mean, I like to play with my breath, but a lot of people are soothed by music. When I play with young people, especially when they're very young, we're talking like 8 years old or 11 years old, and I want them to pump their lungs, I make them do King of the Mountain, which is they put their feet together, they're standing, they take their arms up in the air, they put a block on each hand like they're holding up the trays like they're a waiter, and I make them stay there until the piece of music ends. You will get pumped up and you'll learn something and you'll realize that at the end when the song ends and you bring your arms down, you accomplished, because when the arms are up, he can rise. When the arms are up, the windows are open, so that there's that real ability to play with your body temperature.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
We also have on one of the end pages, there are a few more notes that I want to ask, if it's okay. Number one, we have two great visions. And this is very interesting to me. I'm so happy to get into this with you. I'll read it, dear listener, and then we'll get into it. Katonah yoga meditations are designed to engage two great visions, superior virtue and inferior virtue, as classically articulated in Nevine alchemical practices. Nevine is spelled Neidan, if you want to look it up. Superior virtue defines the vision of being part of the greater whole, a fruit on the tree of organic life and the planet. You grow, you breathe, you live because you belong to the greater whole, interbeing. Inferior virtue addresses the vision that you are a whole unto yourself, an instrument of one's own. It is the vision of self-cultivation, self-responsibility, self-actualization. Again, I want to repeat, all these meditations, movements, conversations that we're having are designed to engage both of those visions. Wow.
Isn't that great? I worked very hard on this.
I can feel it. It's a lifetime. That's a lifetime understanding right there.
Yes.
Let's ask this question specifically. How do we balance the pull towards self-actualization, self-responsibility, which is very important and very much a part of how we can be a part of the greater whole, and the greater whole?
Well, so one thing that when you read maps and you look at this map eventually, is you see that all these maps are designed on grid, because a map is dividing geography. And when you're playing with grids, you're always playing with polarity, right? You're always playing that if there's an up, there's a down. If there's a left, there's a right. If there's an in, there's an out. So one of the greatest polarity is being part of and being separate from. So polarities are always very edgy. They're two ends of the same sword, but they're very different from each other, but they belong to each other. So eventually, it's not that one reconciles a polarity, it's one learns to mediate the polarity. And that's why Trinity, which is really the narrative of all the mystical practices, how do I mediate between this and that, between up and down, between being part of and being separate from? So when you play for being part of, the first way I can understand is knowing that I don't make my heart beat. Right? I don't make myself grow. I grow because I am part of nature. Because I don't breathe because my parents or me. I breathe because nature sets it up that we are part of, and is part of that mutual interdependency. So in my practices, when I'm being part of the greater whole, I tend to connect myself to great nature. And most of my metaphors will be like being a fruit on a tree, connected to great nature, knowing that the fruit is growing by virtue of time, seasons, rotations, all of that material. But eventually, the second virtue is knowing that I'm also whole unto myself. And then I change my metaphor. And that's when I like to think, oh, I'm now dealing with my house, my car, my instrument, my embodiment. So It's not to make one or the other, it's to know that both are happening at the same time. One piece is to be available to the universe to support my well-being. The other piece is to be available to myself to support my well-being. But the game is to mediate both, right? Because now Neidan is the classical Chinese alchemical texts. They were codified in the 1200 AD, but these texts were an amalgam of Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. So it's very in the structure of the mystical to know that you have to mediate between being part of the greater whole, which means that if you're alive, you're going to die, and you have to deal with that. But the other piece, it's my life, right? And how do I deal with that? So then we're back to time management. You get 24 hours in a day. Find a way to do both, to be part of, and also to be self-responsible and separate from.
I think this is the practice of a lifetime, how to mount a response that's appropriate based on a practice that includes both of these considerations.
Yes, and I think in the end, it's very pragmatic, it's very practical. And most people, if you give them language that they can understand, will agree. If the shoe fits, it's much more comfortable. So sometimes you don't have a choice. You have to wear shoes that don't fit. And if you have to wear a shoe that doesn't fit, eventually, I totally understand why you would disembody. Nobody wants to walk 6 miles in high heel shoes that are too tight, and they have no choice but to be wearing them. But when it's about personal material, you can change the shoes. So sometimes you can't, and sometimes you can. Where you can, participate. Where you can't, ask others to help you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Nevine, I am now officially coming to my last question. What is it, in your estimation, that is the most important thing for our listener, a student of yoga, to know about these dimensions of practice, these numbers, these layers, floors of our being?
Okay, so I think the most important thing is to measure up. So in Buddhism, the term is samma, right? And when they're playing with the Eight Noble Truths, these truths begins with the word samma. And samma doesn't mean right or wrong. It means in summation, because life has all these parts to it, but it needs to add up. And that's why if the behavior adds up, you win, right? If the numbers add up, it's doable. So there's a big game of really knowing how to measure up, how to calibrate yourself, to understand where your behavior doesn't add up, and then to be able to see it on the map, see it on the calendar, see it in lots of different ways, and then know that you will get more if you add up. So there's that. I want to say one other thing that has to do with numbers because it's part of the whole archetype. The game is to know 10 numbers, right? It's your 10 fingers, they're known as the 10 sons and daughters. In Vedic work, they're also known as the 10 sisters. And these 10 numbers eventually have relationships. And because life has a lot of math in it, and the goal eventually is to know that life is not arbitrary. Things do add up, and there is a measure, and there are proportions. Say what you want to do is you want to get to, and on a map, I'm going to give you a number. I'll say the number 9. And once you read the maps, just like if you read a map of America, you know, oh, this is what Maine is like, or this is what New York is like. Eventually, you would know what 3 is like and what 7 is like, because numbers have characters and they're very, very defined. So the number 9 really is positioned as the third eye. It is the position of mediated vision, seeing the big picture, right? The pinnacle of achievement when you're still within the confines of your body. So 10 would be the whole, holding everything, but 9 is the nth degree. So it's a pretty high vision, high place to be. So say you want to achieve and get to 9. On the map, the easiest way to get to 9 is 7 plus 2. Right? If you add 7 and 2, it's going to get to 9. And if you know the character 7, 7 has to do with competency, shaking hands, making deals, being in the world. And 2 has to do with the mind, with setting goals. So if you add competency to goal setting, you should be able to achieve the vision. But say you don't. Say you work so hard and you try to be so competent and you know your goals, but you're just not getting what you want. Look on your map. You can get there from 5 and 4. 5 is putting yourself in the center, and 4 is seeing the future, the potential that you want to get to. So 5 and 4 will get you to 9. Or you can get there from 6 and 3. 6 is virility, very sexy, it's very earthy and rooted. And 3 is the heart, being able to articulate. So finding virility and articulating will help you get what you want. So I like the idea that there's lots of ways to get to the same place. But each way is a different route, and each way will take different time, and each way has different information that you'll access as you're using that route. So I think people should know their numbers. They should know to measure up. They should know, does the behavior add up? Are they believing that they've completed what they were supposed to do, but then they find out that, well, it's not complete? Or are they doing too much and all of a sudden there's leftover? So I think it serves people to understand their numbers.
I can't thank you enough. I'm so honored to have you. I'm not a little bit nervous to have you in class in New York for my book tour.
Oh, I'm so excited for you.
Oh, my goodness.
It's
I'm
so
nervous.
great.
I am nervous.
Right?
That's true.
Yes. Well, that's what's so wonderful about others, because they will support your well-being. And everyone's so proud of you.
I really feel it. I feel it. Thank you, Nevine, so much. All of the links that Nevine is going to have for both the calendar, all of her books, and her teachings will be here with us just below this show. But I would love to just say them out loud again. It's katonahyoga.com. The spelling is Katonah, yoga.com. She has a certification program. There is a mentorship program. There are all of the materials to teach you about the MAPS materials and theory. And also, if you want to practice online, there is an extensive video library with Nevine and other fantastic accredited teachers at katonahyoga.com. Thank you, Nevine, so much for everything that you do and everything that you have done in my life, truly. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you so much. We're really so proud to play together.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you again.
Yes. I will see you soon, and thank you for having me on.
You're most welcome. Thank you again.
Okay.